Well, hey, what's up, Rev? It is so good to be back with you tonight. I know that we weren't together last week, but I have been gone for the last 2 weeks because my wife and I have been welcoming my baby boy into the world, Samuel Joel Gilliam. Yes, we have some pictures. Come on, just the cutest. That money shot, though. Selfie. Yeah, he took that himself. Yeah, that was good. But baby's doing good, and my wife is doing good, and so the Gilliams are good right now. But you guys, let me be real for a minute. Bringing a baby into the world is stressful. I'm not sure if you know about this, but it is very scary to do it. See, here's the reason why. Well, there's a lot of reasons why. One, I'm in charge of keeping this dude alive. That by itself is very scary. But two, there are so many people out there with so many opinions about what to do with a baby. I mean, I could be doing one thing, one specific thing with my son, being like, awesome dad, and then 2 minutes later, I read an article that says, oh, you know what? If you do that specific thing with your kid will probably combust into flames and die a terrible death. So, sorry for... It's stressful. It's very stressful. There's just the haters out there make me very intimidated, is all I'm saying. And it's a stress that I hope none of you have to deal with for a very, very long time, all right? But listen, we are in this series called Simon Says. We kicked it off last week. I know that we weren't together, but we posted a message online. And I would encourage you, if you haven't seen that message yet, go to YouTube. Have you heard of YouTube? Go to YouTube and go to our student ministries channel. And there, Aaron Demjanovic kicked it off all last week. And it was a great message, totally worth your time. But tonight, we're continuing in this series. And the reason we're in it, and the reason we're calling it Simon Says, is because we're focusing on a book of the Bible called 1 Peter. This book was written by a dude called Simon Peter. And the focus of the book was to encourage young Christians to sustain their faith even through suffering and as they dealt with, for lack of a better word, their version of haters. And the reason we're going through this book together is because a lot of you are new in your faith. Many of you have recently accepted Jesus just this year, which is amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that you're still coming. This is awesome. But even if you've been following Jesus for a while, it still doesn't mean that it makes it easier to follow Jesus at school or with your friends or in your family or in real life. All of us need a reminder how to do this thing. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to take a look at what Simon says about following Jesus. Now, a really thing to keep in mind as we read this book together is that the audience that Peter was talking to were Christians that were being killed and literally tortured for their faith in Jesus. They had haters, but their haters actually hated them. And it compelled them to kill them, and many times they did. And Peter's response, the reason he wrote this letter, his response to those Christians was basically, don't give up. Don't give in to the hate that you're receiving. Don't allow it to persuade you to let go of your faith, no matter who is oppressing you, no matter what power or position they have over you. Don't give up. And for me, that's really interesting because I don't know about you, but I want to live my life for something bigger than me. I want to live my life not for the intimidation of my haters, but for God himself. I want to live my life to make a difference. And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about how 1 Peter helps us understand how to take ownership of our faith by living for more than our haters. And the way that Peter does this primarily in chapter 2 is by giving us this lesson, trying to teach us how to learn how to submit. Learn how to submit. Now, I know that word submit can sound, a little passive, a little lame. Maybe it's a word that we don't really use all that often. All it basically means is to come second, to put something or someone above ourselves. But the reason Peter does this is to kind of drive home the point of what it really gets at to follow Jesus. So let's take a look at how Simon says it in 1 Peter chapter 2. He says, for the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority, whether the king as head of state or his officials. For the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong and to honor those who do good. Now, you and I may not have a king over us, but all of us have some kind of authority that we answer to. Like the government is not your only authority. Like your mom is your authority, okay? Your teachers are your authority. Your small group leaders here at church, they are your authority. But isn't it typical for us? Isn't it normal for us to begin to view those who are in authority over us as like haters? Imagine for a minute, you get a grade from a teacher that you feel like is unfair, you didn't deserve. Hater. Don't like them. Or you get grounded by your mom because she finds out that you've been lying to her for a while. Hater. Don't like her. Or maybe it's when your small group leader asks you to stop making fart noises during discussion time. Gentlemen, it's gross. Hater. Don't like him. But my point is that it can be easy for us. It can be easy for us to begin to see people in authority over us as our haters. But the interesting thing about Peter here is that he is telling us in response to these people in authority over us to submit to them, which can seem or even feel like a little bit backwards. It feels like we should resist them. We should overcome them. But he says, come second. It can feel like Peter is playing for the other team, but what I think Peter is actually doing here is something so punk rock, something totally countercultural, that it's actually revealing to us a revolutionary way to live our lives. And the reason I think all of that is really wrapped up in the first 5 words in these verses. And it's this right here. For the Lord's sake, submit. That's the motivation. That's the emphasis at the beginning of these verses. You see, when someone decides to become a Christian and dedicate their life to following and learning from Jesus, they're not just putting a hashtag at the end of their life. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all know that it's pretty normal for many of us to take a picture and post it on Instagram of a cause or a mission that we agree with, that we support. And then we'll write a caption underneath it. And then at the end of that, we'll put a hashtag that connects us and that post to whatever mission or whatever cause we believe in. But here's the deal. Just posting a hashtag doesn't mean that you're living it out in your daily life. Just saying, hey, I'm about this. I'm connected to this. Look at me. I'm such a good person because this is a part of my life. Doesn't mean that you're actually living it. It doesn't mean that it's making an impact on your life or on anyone else's life around you. And when that's the case, there's no change in you and there's no change in the world around you. And so when someone decides to become a Christian, they're dedicating their life to learning how to put Jesus first. Not a hashtag at the end of their life, but Jesus at the front of their life. See, their viewpoint changes from Jesus is the one that I work for now. Jesus is the one that I submit to. Jesus is the one that I pray to. Jesus is the leader of my life. So my point is, when people who follow Jesus decide to submit to anyone in authority over them, I'm talking grandparents or parents or teachers or pastors or the government or whoever, they're not pushovers. They're not giving in. Instead, what they are doing is they are boldly and powerfully declaring that their commitment to Jesus compels them to do good, even when they are in the midst of a situation or under someone that's wrong. When we willingly submit our lives to Jesus, it's because we are in relationship with him. We don't live our lives for those in authority over us. We live our lives for the Lord's sake. But listen, it's one thing to say that. That can easily become a hashtag for our lives. Live our lives for the Lord's sake. But it's another thing to actually do it. So how do we do that? How do we learn to submit by living our lives for the Lord's sake? Well, thankfully, I think 1 Peter does a great job of helping us understand how to do that. Kind of maps it out for us in chapter 2, verse 17, when he says this: respect everyone and love the family of believers. Fear God and respect the king. Right here, Peter really lays out 2 points that help guide us to understanding what it means to submit and live our lives for the Lord's sake. And the first point that Peter makes is this right here: respect everyone. So, not too long ago, just maybe 5 years ago, I was a high school Bible teacher at a small Christian school in Ohio. And basically, my job was the same there as it is here, except that I didn't have a dope plasma screen over here. I was just in a lame classroom wearing a tie. And the first day of class, I was a brand new teacher. My class came in, they all sat down, and I asked them to introduce themselves by telling me their name and using one word to describe their vibe. Which I know is like super lame. But I was a teacher. I was kind of embracing that whole lame teacher vibe. So they did it. They were all very nice. They said their name. They said their vibe. But then it got turned for one particular student. She stood up. She said her name. And she looked directly at me and said, "I don't respect the Bible or anyone who teaches it." And I was like, dang. And then the next kid in class was like, "My name is Steve, and my vibe is intimidated." And I was like, "Same, Steve, bro. What do we do with this chick, yo?" But at the end of class that day, I didn't approach that student. I really wanted to. Like, I wanted to do a whole, like, power play where I go as the teacher, and I'm like, "You can't talk to me in front of my class like that, and you're grounded," or whatever teachers do. But I didn't do that. Because I knew that if I did, I would lose all credibility with this student that I had or didn't have at that point. So I just let her go. And she kept coming back to my class every day, and she never said a word. She just kind of stared at me the whole time. And then it came time for the first assignment. I assigned my class to write a report on the study of the Bible. I walked them through this for the first few weeks. They write a report about it. And I kid you not, she turns her paper into me, and the title of her paper was "The Winter of Our Discontent." Like, savage. She, like, had no chill, okay? And so I get this paper, and I'm like, I am going to tear this thing apart, okay? She thinks she's smarter than me. I'm the teacher, yo. I got a red pen. Do you know how empowering it is to once be a student and then finally hold the red pen as a teacher? Like, no wonder they mark up your papers like crazy. It is awesome, okay? And so I'm ready to just like dive into this paper, and then I'm reading it and I realize that I can't do that because it is by far the best written paper of the whole class. Now, she like disagrees and disrespected me almost the whole way through. But her points were clear. She was articulate. She made good points. And so I gave her an A. I passed out the papers the next week, and I asked to see her after class. And we sat down, and she just looked very confused. And I said, "What did you think of the grade I gave you?" And she's like, "Well, I don't understand why you gave it to me." I mean, she was like, "Did you even read my paper?" And I was like, "Yes, I read your paper." But I said, "Yeah, I gave you that grade because it was the best written paper in the class." And then I just kind of looked at her, and she seemed so defeated in that moment. And so I just decided to call all of the good things that I knew about her. I was like, "Did you know that you're really good at this? You're good at writing. Not everybody is. You're good at taking your thoughts and putting them onto paper, and it makes sense. And I'm glad that you're in my class. In fact, I wish that the girl who wrote this paper would show up more often in my class because I need people to see that we can disagree and still like each other. I need people to see that I'm not asking you to agree with me all the time. I'm asking you to participate and be seen in my classroom." She kind of took all of this in stride and then left. She stayed in my class for the rest of the year or the rest of the semester, and she did fine, but she didn't really participate very much until the very end, where I had them write their final papers, and she titled it "The End of the Winter of Our Discontent." And in that paper, she told me that for her whole life, she had never felt like anyone had really seen her. She told me that everyone kind of wrote her off as angry and annoying. And it wasn't until my class that she began to feel respected. She said that she began to have a different viewpoint of the Bible and of Jesus, because when she disrespected me, I respected her in return. See, here's my point in telling you that story. I think respect is best used when it's given away. not when it's hidden or protected all of the time. Because here's the deal. People will not always like you. People will not always accept you. People will not always agree with you. But here's the deal. When you follow Jesus, that doesn't matter. Because we're not living our lives for them. Like, I was not living my life for that student in that moment. In fact, I am not living my life for any of you right now. I am living my life for Jesus, period. Which means that when I receive or when we receive hate, we don't give it back. It means that we don't play the game of gossiping at school. It means that we don't use hurtful language. It means that we don't discriminate ever. It means that we lead our lives with love because that's what Jesus did. Here's the deal. We offer respect to everyone, not because everyone deserves it all of the time, because sometimes people are jerks. We offer respect to everyone because on our worst day, God still respects us. On our most hateful, most jerkish days, Jesus is still for us. And he calls us to be for everyone else. And we have to understand, this is so important. We have to understand that when we submit to others, that doesn't mean that we think that they're right. It just means that we believe that they deserve to be loved, like you and I deserve to be loved. So the first way that Peter helps us understand how to submit and live our lives for the Lord's sake is by respecting everyone. And the second way is this, to fear God. Now, this one needs some explanation because there's a difference between being afraid of God and living in the fear of God. Being afraid of God usually means that we're working off of some assumptions about God. We assume that God doesn't like us. We assume that God is angry with us. We assume that God is distant or not around. We assume that God is judging us all of the time. And when all of those assumptions are bundled together, it usually produces in us a sense of real fear. It's the same reason I don't like going to the dentist, okay? I don't like going to the dentist because I know they're there to keep my mouth and my teeth clean and healthy, but every time I go in there, I assume that they're just gonna take out a drill and take out every single one of my teeth. And I'm afraid of them, and so I don't go. But my point is this. When we have assumptions without relationship, we're afraid. When we have assumptions about God with no relationship with God, we're afraid of God. Sometimes the reason we fear God is because we don't have a relationship with God in the first place. And so Peter's invitation to you and to me is to fear God, which means to deepen our relationship with him. It means to go deeper in our submission to him, to actually get to know who he is and what he's about in our lives and in the world around us. And so my question for all of us tonight is, who do you need to submit to? Who do you need to put first in your life? See, some of you are here tonight, and for real, you need to submit to God. You know it, you feel it as you hear me talk to you right now. Because maybe God has been a part of your life, but he's been on the back burner. Maybe you have been using God like a hashtag, saying, yep, I'm with him, I'm wearing the t-shirt, I've got the Rev shirt on, I'm all about it, but your life totally doesn't look that way. Maybe you use God when it's convenient to you, but you put God away when he's embarrassing you. Well, listen, tonight is the night to go all in. Right now is the time to make a decision, say, I'm done with that. I'm submitting to God and living my life his way. Sometimes you just need to put Jesus first and live your life as if that's true, that he calls the shots in your life. And maybe some of you are here tonight and you need to submit to those in authority over you. Like, for real, some of us are here tonight and we need to stop complaining about teachers and grades and just do our homework. And not only do our homework, but do such a good job on our schoolwork that we can't help but get good grades. or help get grades that we care about, that matter to us. Because I get that school is lame and it's easy to complain about, but doing work that you're proud of is always worthwhile, always, every time. So maybe it's time to put away the complaints and start doing the work. Maybe you're here tonight and you need to start respecting your parents. That doesn't mean that you think that they're right all of the time. It just means that you believe that they are worth loving, just like you and I are worth loving. Or listen, maybe you're here tonight and you need to submit to your small group leaders. And I can hear the cheers of all the small group leaders across campuses right now. But maybe you do. Because here's the deal, they are here to invest in you, to help you grow. And maybe you're offering back to them just sarcasm and shade and distraction all of the time. Or listen, maybe you're here tonight and you just need to remember or remind yourself or realize that you are not the center of the world. That the world does not revolve around you. And that the truest way to live, the first step in learning how to live the most meaningful life possible is submission. Is putting yourself second and putting God first in your life. And so listen, whatever that submission looks like for you, whatever it needs to be for you, do it this week. Maybe that's going to your parents and apologizing. Maybe it's doing your homework. Maybe it's making a decision to say, you know what, God, I'm for real, I'm in. I'm going to let you tell me what to do. I'm going to dive deeper into your word. I'm going to surround myself with friends that hold me accountable and make me better. And I'm going to keep coming to church. Maybe it's moving from a troublemaker in small group or in school to becoming a leader that creates change. Whatever it is, it'll take a sacrifice. It'll hurt for a little bit. But in that sacrifice, your muscle will grow back 2 times stronger, and it will be easier for you to submit to Jesus and to live the life that you were designed to live. So put God first in your life and experience the freedom that comes when you submit to him and live your life for the Lord's sake. All right, Rev, across all campuses, let's pray together. Jesus, man, I want you first, Lord. I want you first and me second. God, I want to be so radically changed by my perspective that I live differently. God, my prayer for every student that hears my voice right now is that they would recognize that submission is not giving in. Submission is not rolling over. Submission is a form of power because we realize our limits and realize that there's a better way to live than just for ourselves. So God, thank you so much for this community. Thank you for what you're doing in the hearts and lives of students all across the Twin Cities. God, I pray that you would only push us deeper and that you would only challenge us more so that we can see more of what you're doing in our lives and in our schools and in our families. So Lord, we trust you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, Rev. See you next week.